Most coaches highlight the importance of using good technique. This is because the way you do an exercise will influence how effective it is. If you hinge in your push-ups or kip in your pull-ups, your arms don't have to work as hard. Over time, this can hinder strength gains and muscle growth. Poor technique can also increase your risk of injury, though many of these claims are dogmatic rather than based on sound reason or evidence. For instance, arching your back in the handstand push-up is perfectly safe and not very different from arching when standing. While coaches stress the importance of technique, being too strict can also have its drawbacks. In this video, I'll explain why flawless technique isn't always better and how lowering your standards can help speed progress. Standards for technique are often arbitrary and based on a desired aesthetic. For example, with the handstand and lever exercises, most consider correct technique to be straight body alignment. This isn't because it's better or safer, but mostly due to how it looks. In each case, straight body alignment is basically a flex by showing you can hold the most challenging shape with the longest lever arm. Optimal technique can also be different for each person. If you watch world-class lifters squat or bench press, you'll see variation in the way they move. This is because everyone's anatomy is different, and what's best for one person won't be best for another. In the squat, those with short femurs will stay more upright, and those with longer femurs tend to bend forward more. For this reason, it's good to think of optimal technique as a range, rather than a narrow definition of how everyone should move. Now that I've covered some basic points, here's why imperfect technique can be a good thing. If you look back on how you learn almost any skill, you probably started with poor technique. Just watch a child learning to throw a ball or write a sentence. With time, practice, and repetition, these skills are refined and technique improves. Learning calisthenics is no different. When you see elite athletes doing skills with perfect form, it's the result of years of hard work. In almost every case, you can look back and see old videos of them with bad form. This doesn't mean you should try to have poor technique, but rather you should strive for perfect form with lower standards for what's acceptable. To demonstrate how this can help, I'll use a few examples. With the handstand push-up, it's normal to only be able to do it with an arched back when first unlocking it. While this isn't perfect technique, it doesn't mean you're not ready to train it. In fact, the best way to get better at something is to practice that exact skill. Just have the intention of overloading with reps or making it cleaner over time. As you build capacity, your ability to control body alignment will also improve. In this case, you don't have to see imperfect form as wrong, but rather as a distinct progression as you work toward clean technique. In addition to building strength and control, this also has psychological benefits. With lower standards, you can progress faster and unlock skills sooner. This will help keep you driven and motivated in your training. Another skill where this is relevant is the MAPU or Mechanical Advantage Planche Push-Up. Ideally, we want the hips and shoulders to stay level at all times, and we want to move through full range. This is challenging to progress to, as the gap between tuck planche push-ups and clean MAPUs is quite large. Rather than limiting yourself to perfect technique where you may plateau, you can progress to a modified MAPU with different standards. For example, to first unlock it, you could start on parallettes and let your legs drop below your hands. As you build capacity, you can then move to the floor without touching your chest to the ground, and finally build to a perfect rep through full range. As with handstand push-ups, this allows you to get familiar with the movement and build capacity. This also doesn't stop you from doing regressions. For instance, you could do 1 or 2 full attempts each week before doing easier exercises with perfect technique. One final but slightly different example is with learning the planche. Ideally, we want to push toe with protraction, but many struggle with this component. It's common to be able to hold a position for 15 seconds, but only the first 5 with full protraction. If we limit ourselves to only doing holds in protraction, we'll only be fatiguing the scapular protractors rather than the shoulder flexors. This means we won't gain much strength in the most important muscles used in the planche. While your form may improve, you'll be stuck on the same progression for longer than necessary. Instead, you can just have the intention of protraction, but train to or close to true failure. This way you'll stimulate greater gains in the shoulder flexors with the same stimulus for the scapular protractors. Not only does this mean faster progress with the planche, but more strength in the shoulders that you can transfer to other skills. To help target this protraction deficit, you can include specific scapular work toward the end of your sessions. While I'm fairly liberal with exercise standards, there are still some things I discourage. For instance, I don't recommend learning the muscle up with one arm at a time. This is because it's a hard habit to break, and I don't think it helps much with unlocking the desired technique. Whereas I often encourage slight kipping if it's needed to get over the bar. With planche holds, I generally set the standard of straight arms, despite being relaxed about the shoulder blades. One exercise where I find perfect technique is important is the pike push-up. While angling the forearms back isn't dangerous, this will change the motor pattern and make strength gains less transferable to handstand push-ups. Unfortunately, there's no clear-cut rule for what standards you should set for each exercise. This is where having guidance from a knowledgeable coach can be helpful. Even when you can perform with good technique, different standards can be helpful for different attributes. For example, some days you may focus on form, and other days you may focus on capacity, allowing some breakdown in technique. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. For more lessons like this one, you can check out my content on Baseblocks Digital.